Hey, what's up, bro? I know why you're here. You just bought your C6 Corvette and you don't even know how to change the oil on it. Don't be embarrassed, this is a safe spot. I'm actually glad that you clicked on this video because this is gonna be your full guide on how to change the oil on your C6 Corvette. Now right here, we have a 2010 Corvette Grand Sport, but this applies to any Corvette from 2008 to 2013 with the LS3. I'm gonna go over everything you need to know in tremendous detail about how to change your oil. And I know what you're gonna say, there's thousands of videos on how to change the oil on a C6 Corvette. But bro, let me ask you this. Do you really wanna watch a 6-year-old video recorded by a boomer on like a GoPro 6, GoPro 4? Come on, bro, that's just outdated. Why did you think they remade the Little Mermaid or the Happy Birthday song, bro? Just times change, man, and you gotta keep up with the times. You gotta spice things up. The funny thing is, when I was building this engine, this LS3, I actually had to YouTube a lot of the procedures. So don't be embarrassed, bro, I'm telling you. Nobody's born knowing everything. So let's go over what we're gonna need. I know it looks like a lot, but it's really not. Something to catch the oil with, some sort of jack. You're gonna need a stopper for the rear wheels. You're gonna need some jacksons. I got some Harbor Freight jacksons because we like living life at the edge. I'm actually gonna recommend that you use these rubber pucks because it makes jacking up the car a lot safer. You're gonna need a 15mm wrench and an oil filter wrench. You can also use a ratchet. You're gonna need something to clean the mess up. You're obviously gonna need a funnel. We're gonna go with what's recommended, which is the 5W30 full synthetic. So for the filter, you can either use the PF48E or the UPF48R. I believe this is an upgraded filter. It's usually a little bit more premium and it's recommended for the dry sump system. So this is what I'm gonna run. So the first thing we gotta do is pop open the hood. I'm telling you, bro, we're not gonna be skipping any steps. On the driver's side, bottom left, get a little latch, pop it open. And if this is your first time opening the hood on your C6 Corvette, look how cool this freaking looks. Oh yeah. If you have a base model, your oil filler cap is gonna be somewhere right here on top of the valve covers. This one has a dry sump system, so the oil filler is actually gonna be over here where you see the 5W30 mark. That's the oil that's recommended for the system. And the reason why it's all the way over here and not in the engine bay is because it's got the special reservoir tank. When taking really sharp turns, it feeds oil throughout the engine. If it's right here, it takes a 10.5 quarts. If it's here, it takes 6.5. Don't overfill it. You may be really thirsty, but I can assure you, your car is definitely not. So this is one of the tips I always recommend. Take the cap off, make sure you don't see any milkshake on top of the cap. Maybe on the dry sump system, it won't be as noticeable, but if it's on top of the engine, you remove the cap and you see like a milkshake substance. What I recommend doing is, I recommend you park your car in the ghetto, windows down, key in it, and then call your insurance and report it as stolen, because it's very possible that you're gonna have a blown head gasket, or it could be as simple as condensation. But I wouldn't recommend taking that risk. Just submit a claim and get a different Corvette, bro. And another pro tip why it's a good idea to remove the cap is because it just allows the oil to drain a lot faster and a lot smoother. I like to put the cap where the latch is at. That way you don't forget to accidentally put the cap back on. And you can't possibly close the hood if this is in the way. What I like doing before starting the oil change is checking the dipstick, seeing how the level is, making sure it wasn't completely dry, making sure it's not too contaminated. And on Corvettes with the dry sump system, it's recommended that you only check the oil when it's nice and warm, about 175 degrees. So before jacking up the car, put one of these behind the tires. You don't want this thing sliding around. Underneath here on the frame rail, it's actually very slippery. The jack actually ends up slipping off and it rips up the fender and the side skirt. So that's when I recommend putting one of these rubber pucks. And that pretty much makes it so that nothing slips around. Highly recommend getting some of these also, because if you have extra, you can drive over them. It gives you that extra clearance to be able to jack up the car. So this is what I like doing. I like getting one of these spare tire sister jacks, and I like putting them in here around this area, kind of where the door is at. And this is where you're gonna lift it up, and it's gonna give you that extra clearance to be able to put the bigger jack underneath and jack up the car. Right underneath that section of the frame is where I like to jack it up. That's a pretty rigid part of the subframe, and then it gives you enough space to be able to put the jack stands right in here in the front. You can put them right here, or you can put it here also. As long as it doesn't get in the way of you changing the oil, what I would recommend is lowering the vehicle slowly into the spot that you choose and making sure you have stable contact. All right, bro, since you're still watching, I want to show you a very advanced technique that not even the master lube techs at Jiffy Lube can get right sometimes. But if you master this technique, you can actually do the oil change without getting your fingers dirty. So this is one of the 15mm drain plugs. You also have another one right here at the front. This is obviously the oil filter. So what you do, you crack this open, you back it up all the way as much as you can, but putting some pressure against it so that the oil doesn't just completely come out. Once you feel like it's ready to come out, pull the drain plug upwards like this, and the stream's gonna come out without your fingers even getting dirty. So that was a freaking success. So you see how the oil is almost out of there? You don't have to wait till it's completely dry. How it is right now, you can put the drain plug back in and you'll be safe. And you can move on to removing the second drain plug right there. I recommend doing the drain plugs first and then the oil filter. You can do them all at the same time if you don't mind making a mess. Now this one is also a 15mm. I like to drain it out second. And you can see why it's important to drain out this second drain plug. Look at how much more oil came out of it. I believe this only happens in the models with the dry sump system. I believe the regular ones only have one drain plug. If you do not have one of these magnetic drain plugs, I suggest swapping your drain plugs out for one of these, because this is like having an additional oil filter. Some people like to put the oil that's dripping out into the seal right here. You do have to lubricate it, but I highly suggest using fresh new oil, because let's say if the old oil has some debris or dirt in it, it could actually damage the seal. You want to fill this up with some oil. You see the position of the filter in these cars, it's directly vertical. So when you first start up the car, it takes a little bit for the oil pressure to build up. But if you pre-fill it with oil, you're gonna have instant pressure right away. All right, now these drain plugs are supposed to be tied into 18 foot-pounds. You can either use a torque wrench or you can have some common sense and make it tight by hand. If you're built like Shrek, only use 2 fingers to snug it up like this. There's absolutely no way you can over torque it using only 2 fingers. That's what I recommend doing. That way you don't strip out the aluminum drain plug. Now let's take out the oil filter. Crank this loose like that. I like cleaning the surface as best as I can. Make sure the old gasket doesn't get stuck to the flange. You definitely don't want a double gasket. Then I get the new filter. So once you snug it up, you want to go 3/4 of a turn. And that should be as tight as you want to get it. And there you go. After all that is done, bro, you just want to bring it down, but make sure you have the jack set up in the position where you raise it up. That way you can slide this thing out without any issues. Bro, that was a complete fail. I didn't know this thing was that loose. I barely touched it with my fingers and it came undone. Oh, that was a freaking fail, but it's alright. This car gets driven and the splitter is scraped up either way. No biggie. Alright, so now you want to get your funnel. You want to line it up. Make sure you're in the hole. Is it in yet, Mr. Krabs? It looks that way. Alright, now don't be scared. Dropping the 2 bottles. It's gonna take it, don't worry. It may seem like a lot, but it does take both of them. I can't be the only one that gets thirsty when they see this. Do you not feel like just tasting that? Hey yo, I can't be the only one that wishes they can drink this thing. It looks so good. Alright, so now that you put the oil in the car, you want to make sure it's nice and flat. You want to make sure it's not at an angle, it doesn't have the jack steel underneath there. So here is another technique that is overkill, but your Corvette has a special feature to where you can step on the clutch all the way down, step on the gas, and then turn the ignition switch. As you hold it, the vehicle is going to be cranking over, but it's not going to be starting. This is so that you can prime the engine of oil before it actually fires up. This is definitely not necessary, but it's good to know. Like I said, anything helps. Is double protection. Kind of like keeping a bottle of hot sauce next to the Trojans. If you know, you know. There you go. Actually, it sounds horrible, but this is good in case your vehicle sits over winter. You let it in storage for a good amount of time. You don't want to fire it up without any oil pressure in it. So it's just a little precaution. So now let's actually start it up. Let it idle for 10 seconds and then we're gonna check for leaks. Now we can go down here and we can see if we have any leaks, bro. And we do not. Honestly, bro, if at this point your vehicle is leaking, what you gotta do is you gotta turn it off right away. And then I need you to come here close to the camera, bro. Really close to the camera. And I'm gonna smack the living sunshine out of you, bro. How the hell did you mess up so bad when I'm walking you literally by your hand, step by step? That shouldn't be the case, bro. If you get to this point and you have an oil leak, don't do your oil change ever again. Just take it to Jiffy Lube. Okay, now this is the point where we check the oil, making sure that we're right at the right level. When checking the oil, I like to use the paper towel instead of the red rags, because the red rags could leave some residue in the dipstick. When you stick it back in to recheck the level, it can go through the oil system. We don't want that. All right, bro, we got your dipstick right here. We got 3 markings in it. So this is low, this is medium, this is full. You don't want to go all the way to full. You don't want to go past it. It's okay if it's in the middle. It doesn't have to be all the way over here. Actually, if you overfill it, you're gonna be risking blowing some seals. You're gonna be risking losing a little bit of horsepower. To the capacity that's recommended, make sure the engine is nice and warm when you check the oil also. All right, bro, so now that we're done, let me show you how to properly close the hood in your Corvette. Don't slam it, leave it staged. Just push one side and push the other side, and you're done. Trust me, if you're a brand new Corvette owner, these little details matter because you don't want to develop a bad habit, constantly just be slamming the hood, slamming the hatch. These little details actually help out a lot. And before I forget, let me show you how to reset your oil reminder. You cycle through the trip button until you see your oil life, and then you hit the reset right here at the bottom. And it'll reset on its own. It's that easy. The worst part is gonna be cleaning up the mess. That is the reason why a lot of people don't like doing their own oil changes. This is just annoying. But now you can finally say that you changed the oil on your own Corvette. You get the satisfaction of it. You get to cross it off your to-do list for today. And then you can go and test drive the car. Do some fat ass pulls because you pay for the gas and might as well use it, right? So that's it, bro. I hope you learned something valuable. What I personally learned is that if you're recording an oil change, it takes it from taking 8 minutes to taking a whole hour. I hope you got some value out of this. This is the new full guide on how to change the oil on your C6 Corvette. So we'll see you next week.